It was a chilly autumn evening when Mark decided to propose to his girlfriend, Sarah. The sun was setting behind the skyline, casting a warm golden hue over the city, and the vibrant leaves crunched underfoot as they walked through the park. Everything felt right, the mood was perfect, and the moment he had been waiting for was finally within reach. Mark had spent weeks planning the proposal. He had reserved a spot at the park where they had shared many happy memories. Under a grand oak tree, where they often picnicked and laughed, he envisioned a beautiful setup with fairy lights strung overhead, a cozy blanket laid out, and a bottle of their favorite champagne ready to pop. His heart raced as he thought about the ring he had carefully chosen. It was simple yet elegant, reflecting Sarah's taste perfectly. They had been dating for over 3 years, and Mark felt confident that she would say yes. But underneath the excitement, a knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach. "Mark, do you smell that?" Sarah asked, snapping him out of his thoughts. "What? Smell what?" he replied, trying to play it cool. "Is that caramel popcorn?" she asked, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. Mark chuckled, realizing they were walking past a vendor. "You know, I think it is. Want to grab some?" Sarah nodded eagerly, and they made their way to the stall. As she handed over some cash, he watched her excitement, and for a moment, all his worries faded away. The warmth of the moment enveloped him, and he couldn't wait to get to the proposal. "All right, let's find a spot to sit," he said, leading her to a small clearing beneath the oak tree. They settled down, the blanket soft against the grass, and began enjoying their snacks while watching the sunset. As they shared stories and laughter, Mark felt the weight of the world lift off his shoulders. This was the perfect moment. After finishing the popcorn, he cleared his throat. "Hey, Sarah. Can I ask you something?" "Sure. What's on your mind?" she replied, tilting her head with curiosity. "Do you remember the first time we came to this park?" he asked, a smile creeping onto his face. "Of course. It was a beautiful day, and we spent hours just talking and enjoying each other's company," she reminisced, her eyes shining with fond memories. "That day meant a lot to me," Mark said, feeling the moment shift. "It was when I realized how special you are to me." He reached into his jacket pocket, heart pounding in his chest as he felt the cool metal of the ring. "And I've thought a lot about our future. I want to create more memories with you, Sarah. I want to share my life with you." With a deep breath, he got down on one knee, the ring glinting in the fading light. "Will you marry me?" For a brief moment, time stood still. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise, and her mouth opened in a silent gasp. Mark's heart raced as he awaited her response. But just as he thought she was about to say yes, a loud voice broke the moment. "Hey! Look over here." Mark turned to see a group of people nearby, clearly caught up in their own world, laughing and taking pictures. The distraction was enough to pull Sarah's attention away from him. She stood up, drawn to the commotion, completely missing the proposal that had just unfolded. "Mark, look. They're doing a photo shoot. Let's go check it out," she exclaimed, grabbing his hand and pulling him toward the group. Stunned, Mark stood up, his heart sinking. The moment he had envisioned for so long was slipping through his fingers. He hurried after her, trying to maintain his composure. As they approached the group, Mark tried to get Sarah's attention. Sarah, he started, but the excitement of the photo shoot overwhelmed her. "Look at how cute they are. This is such a fun idea," Sarah gushed, pointing at the happy couple posing for their photos. Mark felt a mixture of frustration and disappointment. He had poured his heart into this moment, and now it felt overshadowed by someone else's joy. "Yeah, it's great," he said, forcing a smile while internally cringing. After a few minutes of watching the photo shoot, Sarah finally turned back to him. "Sorry, I got distracted. What were you saying?" Mark cleared his throat, trying to regain the mood. Never mind. I just thought it was a nice moment. Come on, let's take a picture too, she suggested, unaware of how close they had been to a life-changing moment. Sure, he replied, masking his frustration. As they posed for a selfie, Mark felt his heart ache deeper. The proposal was slipping away, and he couldn't understand why this was happening. After the selfie, they began to walk again, and Mark desperately searched for another opportunity to propose. The park was filled with families and couples, each moment feeling more stolen than the last. But as they walked in silence, Mark couldn't shake the feeling of disappointment. This wasn't how he had imagined it. Hey, how about we sit back down for a bit, he suggested, hoping to salvage the evening. Sure, sounds good. Sarah agreed, her energy still high from the earlier excitement. They settled back under the oak tree, the beautiful scenery now feeling bittersweet. Mark took a deep breath, steeling himself for one more attempt. Sarah, he started again, I really want to share something important with you. She looked at him, her expression shifting from playful to curious. What is it, Mark? As he prepared to speak, he caught a glimpse of the nearby vendor packing up. A sense of urgency flooded through him. This moment had to happen now or it might never happen at all. Sarah, he said, his voice firm yet gentle, I want you to know how much you mean to me and how I see my future with you. I love you, and I want to make this official. He reached into his pocket one more time, heart pounding as he revealed the ring. Will you marry me? The world around them seemed to fade away. Sarah's eyes went wide again, but this time, she didn't look away. Mark. You really did it? Yes. I really did. So, what do you say? He asked, holding his breath, his heart racing. Of course, yes. Yes, I'll marry you, she exclaimed, the realization finally sinking in. As Mark slipped the ring onto her finger, the crowd erupted into cheers, having witnessed the moment unfold. Relief washed over him, and he felt the joy of the moment fill his heart. But as Sarah hugged him tightly, Mark couldn't shake the feeling of the earlier distraction. He had nearly lost the moment to a group of strangers, and as he held her close, he promised himself that they would always prioritize their love, even in the chaos of the world around them. Chapter 2: The Aftermath. The park was alive with cheers and applause as Mark and Sarah embraced, the tension from earlier melting away in the warmth of their shared joy. Mark could hardly believe what had just happened. After what felt like a whirlwind of distractions and miscommunications, he had finally proposed, and Sarah had said yes. As they pulled apart, Sarah's face lit up with excitement. I can't believe you did it. This is amazing, she exclaimed, gazing at the sparkling ring on her finger. Mark felt a wave of relief wash over him. I was worried you wouldn't want to after all that chaos with the photo shoot, he admitted, a chuckle escaping his lips. Oh, please. Nothing could have ruined that moment for me. You were so sweet to plan all of this, she replied, leaning in for another hug. I love it. But as they basked in the glow of their engagement, Mark couldn't help but notice a few lingering feelings of doubt creeping in. He couldn't shake the memory of the earlier distraction, the way Sarah had turned away from him in the moment he had anticipated for so long. Let's celebrate, Sarah exclaimed, pulling him towards a nearby restaurant that had outdoor seating. I want to call Mia and let her know. Mark smiled, but inside, he felt a twinge of anxiety. That sounds great, he said, pushing the worries aside for the moment. As they sat at the restaurant, Sarah animatedly recounted their proposal story to Mia over the phone, her voice ringing with excitement. Mark watched her, admiring her happiness but feeling an inexplicable sense of unease. When Sarah hung up, her eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. Mia is so excited for us. She said she'll start planning the engagement party right away. That's awesome, Mark said, forcing a smile. He wanted to feel as excited as she was, but the earlier incident nagged at him. After dinner, they strolled through the park again, this time hand in hand, under the twinkling lights strung from the trees. Couples were laughing and children were playing, and the night air was crisp and refreshing. Tonight was perfect, right? Sarah said, squeezing his hand. Mark nodded, his heart warming at the sight of her joy. It really was. As they reached the grand oak tree where the proposal had taken place, Sarah stopped. "I want to take a picture here," she said, pulling out her phone. "Sure." Mark agreed, hoping to capture the moment. After snapping a few pictures, Sarah turned to him with a beaming smile. "I can't wait to post these. Everyone will be so happy for us." "Yeah, they will," he replied, feeling a little hesitant. He didn't want to dampen her spirits, but the thought of sharing the moment with the world felt overwhelming. As they began walking again, Mark felt the need to voice his concerns. "Hey, Sarah. I know this is an exciting time, but do you think we should keep this to ourselves for a little while?" She looked at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I just mean that we've had a lot of distractions today. I want us to enjoy this moment together before diving into planning and sharing it with everyone," he explained, hoping she would understand. "Mark, I get that, but this is huge. Everyone is going to want to celebrate with us. I want to share our happiness," she replied, her excitement still palpable. "I know, and I want that too. But I also want to make sure we're focused on us first, you know," he said gently. Sarah paused, her expression shifting as she processed his words. "I see what you mean. I just thought that sharing it would make it feel more real." Mark reached out to squeeze her hand. "It is real, Sarah. And I love you. I just think it would be nice to have a moment where it's just about us before the world gets involved." She nodded slowly, the excitement in her eyes dimming just a bit. "Okay, I can see where you're coming from. Maybe we can tell our families first, then think about the engagement party and all that." "That sounds perfect," Mark said, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. As they continued walking, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that the day had been a whirlwind. The proposal had been everything he had dreamed of, but the distractions lingered in the back of his mind. Later that night, back at their apartment, Sarah sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone, buzzing with energy. "I can't believe I'm engaged," she exclaimed, her face lit up with joy. Mark watched her, still caught up in the euphoria of the proposal, but feeling a sense of distance. He knew he needed to address the distractions of the day, especially the way Sarah had turned away from him during the proposal. "Sarah," he said carefully, "can we talk about what happened earlier?" Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" "When I proposed, you seemed a little distracted when the other group showed up." "I just want to make sure we're on the same page about everything," he admitted, trying to keep his tone gentle. She sighed, her eyes drifting away. "I didn't mean to ignore you. It was just such a shock. I think I was overwhelmed by the whole thing." "I get that," he said, feeling a mixture of understanding and lingering doubt. "But it's important to me that we're fully present for each other in moments like that." Sarah nodded slowly, her expression softening. "You're right. I'm sorry if I made you feel like I wasn't paying attention. I promise that it wasn't my intention." Mark felt a weight lift, but he still wanted to dig deeper. "And what about the distraction?" "I just want us to have our moments without letting outside noise interfere." She met his gaze, sincerity shining in her eyes. "I understand what you mean. I love how you planned everything, and I want to make sure we cherish those moments together, just the two of us. I'll be more mindful of that in the future." As they settled into the conversation, Mark felt a sense of relief. He wanted to address the future as a couple, ensuring they would always communicate and keep their love at the forefront, no matter what distractions came their way. With the ring on her finger and love in their hearts, they began to envision their future together, promising to face every challenge as a team. As the night deepened, Mark felt hope bloom within him. The day had been tumultuous, but the love they shared would help them navigate whatever came next. With open hearts and honest communication, they were ready to face the journey ahead. Chapter 3: Cracks in the Facade. As the days turned into weeks following their engagement, Mark and Sarah basked in the excitement of their new chapter together. They spent evenings scrolling through wedding ideas online, dreaming of venues, dresses, and guest lists. Yet, amid the joy, Mark noticed subtle changes in their dynamic that made him uneasy. One evening, they sat on the couch, laptops open, discussing their favorite wedding themes. Sarah was animated, her eyes sparkling with ideas. "What do you think about a rustic wedding? We could have string lights and wooden tables. It would be so charming," she exclaimed, her enthusiasm infectious. Mark nodded, trying to keep up with her energy. "Yeah, that sounds nice. But I thought we talked about wanting something more traditional," he countered gently, hoping to steer the conversation back to their previous discussions. Sarah's smile faltered slightly. "I know, but I just love the idea of making it unique to us. We should create our own style." Mark felt a twinge of frustration but held back. He wanted to support her vision, yet he couldn't shake the feeling that their conversations had become less about mutual decisions and more about Sarah's preferences. "Of course, but we should also consider what we both want, right?" he said, trying to keep his tone even. She looked at him, her expression softening. "You're right. Let's find a balance. How about we brainstorm together and come up with a list of ideas we both like?" "Sounds good to me," he replied, feeling a flicker of relief. As they continued to plan, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeper at play. The earlier distractions during the proposal lingered in the back of his mind. Was Sarah still feeling overwhelmed, or was she merely caught up in the excitement? Later that week, as they were at dinner with friends, Mark observed Sarah's behavior. She was lively and engaging with everyone, laughing and sharing stories, but he sensed a slight distance between them. When they were alone, it felt like a veil had descended. After dinner, as they walked home, Mark decided to address it. "Hey, I've noticed you seem a bit distracted lately," he began cautiously. Sarah turned to him, surprised. "What do you mean?" "I'm just excited about the wedding planning." "I get that, but it feels like you're focusing more on the wedding and less on us. I want to make sure we're still connecting, you know," he said, hoping to strike a balance. She sighed, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. "I'm just trying to plan the best wedding I can. This is a big deal for us." "I know, and I want that too," he replied, trying to remain calm. "But I also want us to enjoy this time together without getting lost in the details. We should be each other's priority." For a moment, silence hung between them, the air thick with unspoken words. Sarah finally spoke, her voice softening. "You're right. I've just been so wrapped up in everything that I didn't realize I was pulling away." Mark reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Let's make sure we keep that connection alive. We're in this together." As they settled into bed that night, Mark couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. He wanted to be supportive, but he couldn't help but wonder if Sarah was fully committed to their relationship or if the thrill of wedding planning had consumed her entirely. A few days later, while scrolling through social media, Mark stumbled upon a post that made his stomach drop. It was a picture of Sarah and a male friend from college, smiling widely together at a party. The caption read, "Had the best time catching up with this amazing person. #old friends #reunited." Mark's heart raced as he scrolled through the comments, which were filled with praises for their friendship. But something gnawed at him. He had never heard of this reunion or even known about this friend's presence in Sarah's life. Trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, he decided to bring it up. That evening, as they were making dinner together, he took a deep breath. "Hey, I saw a picture of you and Josh on social media. It looks like you two had a fun time." Sarah's face lit up momentarily before a flicker of surprise crossed her features. "Oh, that? Yeah, it was just a little get-together with some old friends." "Old friends?" Mark pressed gently, hoping to gauge her reaction. "I didn't know you were getting together with him. We reconnected a few weeks ago at a mutual friends gathering." "It was no big deal," she replied, her tone nonchalant. Mark felt a knot in his stomach. "It just seems like you didn't mention it before. I thought we were keeping each other in the loop about everything." She paused, her expression shifting slightly. "I didn't think it was that important. It was just one night, and I thought you'd be fine with it." "I am fine, but it feels like there's been a lot of things you haven't shared with me," Mark said carefully. "I just want to make sure we're on the same page." Sarah's expression hardened slightly. "Mark, you're overthinking this. It was just a casual reunion. You don't have to worry about it." The dismissal stung, and Mark's heart raced. "It's not about worrying, it's about trust. I want us to be open with each other, especially now that we're engaged." "Trust me, I'm not hiding anything," she said defensively. "You're making it sound worse than it is." Mark took a deep breath, feeling frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "I'm not trying to sound accusatory. I just want us to have a strong foundation moving forward. If we can't communicate about small things, how will we handle bigger issues later?" "Mark, please," she said, her voice softening. "I appreciate your concern, but I need you to trust me. It was just a night with friends." Mark nodded slowly, trying to quell his rising anxiety. "I want to trust you, but I need to know you'll share things with me. It's important for us." She sighed, seeming to ponder his words. "Okay, I'll try to be more open. But you have to understand that I have my own life too, and I'll have friends outside of this relationship." "Of course, and I want that for you," Mark replied, hoping to bridge the gap. "But I just don't want anything to come between us, especially now." "Me neither," Sarah said, her tone softening again. "I love you, Mark, and I want this to work. I promise I'll communicate better." As they finished dinner in a contemplative silence, Mark felt a mixture of relief and lingering concern. He loved Sarah and wanted to support her, but the cracks in their communication felt unsettling. He hoped that they could navigate these challenges together, but the underlying tension left him with a sense of unease. That night, as Mark lay in bed, he realized that their journey together would require more than just love. It would demand patience, trust, and a commitment to open dialogue. He hoped they could find a way to bridge the gap before it grew any wider, but only time would tell if they could overcome these hurdles. Chapter 4: Hidden Truths. As the weeks went by, Mark and Sarah continued their wedding planning, but the tension lingered just beneath the surface. Despite Sarah's promises to communicate better, Mark still felt a wall between them. He noticed subtle changes in her behavior: late nights out with friends, fewer shared meals, and increasingly frequent phone calls that she would take in another room. One Friday evening, Mark returned home from work to find Sarah pacing the living room, her brow furrowed in concentration. "Hey, everything okay?" he asked, dropping his bag by the door. "Oh. Yeah, just thinking about the seating chart for the wedding," she replied, her voice too bright. "It's a lot more complicated than I thought." "Need help with it?" he offered, hoping to bridge the distance between them. "No, I've got it under control," she said quickly, a hint of defensiveness creeping into her tone. "Why don't you go relax for a bit? I'll handle this." Mark felt a flicker of disappointment but nodded. Okay, if you say so. I'll just be in the other room. As he retreated to the living room, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. After a while, he grabbed his laptop and decided to distract himself by browsing wedding forums, looking for inspiration. The vibrant discussions and shared experiences were a welcome distraction, but he couldn't fully immerse himself. A few hours later, he heard Sarah's laughter echoing from her phone. Curiosity piqued, he stood up and peeked into the kitchen. Sarah was sitting at the table, her phone pressed to her ear, chatting animatedly. "Yeah, I can't believe you thought that was a good idea. You're too much," she giggled, twirling a lock of hair around her finger. Mark's heart sank. He felt an urge to listen, to understand who was making her laugh like that. After a moment of indecision, he turned away, deciding to give her space. But the doubt gnawed at him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the wall between them was getting thicker. The next day, Sarah suggested they take a break from wedding planning and go out for brunch. "We need some quality time together," she said, her eyes sparkling. Mark agreed, feeling hopeful that this outing would help them reconnect. At the cafe, they enjoyed pancakes and mimosas, and for a moment, the atmosphere felt lighter. They talked about their favorite memories together, shared laughter, and even reminisced about their first date. But as they returned home, Mark noticed Sarah's phone buzz incessantly. She glanced at it repeatedly, her brow furrowing deeper each time. The moment they walked through the door, she excused herself to take the call. "Who's that?" Mark asked casually, attempting to mask his growing concern. "It's just Mia," Sarah replied, slipping into the other room. Mark forced a smile but felt a pit forming in his stomach. He sat on the couch, trying to focus on a book but unable to concentrate. After a few minutes, he decided to stand up and grab a glass of water, but he couldn't resist eavesdropping. "Yeah, I know. It was just a misunderstanding," Sarah said, her voice muffled through the wall. Mark's heart raced as he tried to decipher the rest of the conversation. Mark is just being paranoid. I swear it was nothing. You know how he can get, she continued, her words hitting Mark like a slap in the face. He felt his heart drop. The doubt that had lingered in his mind now morphed into a painful reality. Was she hiding something from him? "Okay, I'll talk to you later," Sarah said, her voice cheery as she ended the call and walked back into the room. She smiled at Mark, but the warmth didn't reach her eyes. "Everything good?" he asked, attempting to keep his tone casual. "Yeah, just catching up with Mia about wedding ideas," she said, brushing it off. "Cool," Mark replied, but his heart felt heavy. That night, unable to shake his unease, Mark decided to do something he had always prided himself on avoiding. He snooped. It felt wrong, but he couldn't help himself. He waited until Sarah went to bed and quietly picked up her phone from the charger. The screen lit up, revealing notifications from group chats and messages, but one caught his eye. It was a message from Josh, the old friend Sarah had mentioned before. "Josh *, can't wait to see you again. Let's make sure to keep this a secret for now." Mark's breath caught in his throat. Secret? Why would they need to keep anything a secret? He clicked on the conversation, scrolling through their exchanges. They had been chatting frequently, sharing inside jokes and flirting in a way that felt too familiar. "Hey, can we keep this between us?" Sarah had texted him just days ago, and Josh had replied, "Of course. It'll be our little secret." Mark felt his heart race. Anger bubbled up inside him, mixed with a deep sense of betrayal. How could she do this? He put the phone back down, feeling sick to his stomach. He climbed into bed next to Sarah, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with his thoughts. How could he confront her about this? Would she deny it? The next morning, Mark woke up feeling a sense of dread. He knew he couldn't let this go unaddressed. He needed to confront her, but he also feared the fallout. What if they couldn't recover from this? After breakfast, as they sat down to continue wedding planning, Mark took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Sarah, we need to talk." She looked up, her expression shifting to one of concern. "What's wrong?" "I saw some messages on your phone last night. I don't want to invade your privacy, but I have to know what's going on with you and Josh," he said, his voice steady but laced with tension. Sarah's face drained of color. "Mark, why did you tell him to keep things a secret? What's really going on?" he pressed, feeling the weight of each word. "Mark, it's not what you think," she exclaimed, her voice rising defensively. "We were just reminiscing about old times, I swear." "Revisiting old times?" Mark echoed, frustration boiling over. "It doesn't look like that from where I'm standing. It looks like you're hiding something from me." "Don't twist this into something it's not," she shot back, her eyes flashing with anger. "We were friends before we even met." "It's harmless." "Harmless," he repeated incredulously. "How is keeping it a secret harmless? If it were truly innocent, why not just tell me?" Sarah's expression softened, but her defensiveness remained. "I didn't want to hurt your feelings. I thought you would overreact." "I wouldn't have overreacted if you had just been honest with me," Mark exclaimed, his heart racing. "I trusted you." Tears glistened in Sarah's eyes, and for a moment, silence hung heavy in the air. "I didn't mean to betray your trust," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "I promise it was nothing. I should have told you." Mark took a step back, feeling a mixture of anger and pain. "But you didn't, and that's what hurts the most. If we're going to build a life together, we can't have secrets between us. That's not a foundation for a marriage." "I get that, but I never meant for this to happen," she said, her voice breaking. "You have to believe me. I love you." Mark looked at her, torn between his love for her and the betrayal he felt. "I want to believe you, but it's hard when I see messages like that. You're making it difficult." "I'll cut ties with Josh if that's what it takes," she said earnestly, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I'll do anything to prove my loyalty to you." Mark ran a hand through his hair, feeling conflicted. "It's not about cutting ties, it's about trust. If we can't communicate about everything, then how can we move forward? Let's work on it together," she pleaded, stepping closer. "I don't want to lose you over this. You're my future, and I'll do whatever it takes to make things right." Mark's heart ached at her sincerity, but the pain of betrayal still lingered. "We need to rebuild that trust," he said slowly. "It's not going to happen overnight, and I need time to process everything." "I understand," Sarah replied, her voice softer now. "I'll respect your space. Just know that I love you, and I want to fix this." As they stood together, the tension hung in the air, a reminder of the fracture that had formed between them. Mark knew it would take time to heal, but for the first time, he felt a glimmer of hope. If they could learn to communicate openly and rebuild their trust, maybe they could emerge stronger than before. That night, as they lay in bed, Mark felt a mix of apprehension and hope. The road ahead would be difficult, but perhaps they could find a way to mend the cracks in their relationship. Together, they would have to face their challenges head-on, willing to confront the truth and learn from the past. Chapter 5, The Healing Process. The days that followed were fraught with a mix of tension and cautious hope. Mark and Sarah made a conscious effort to rebuild their relationship, communicating more openly and honestly than ever before. Each conversation felt like stepping onto shaky ground, but they were determined to strengthen their bond. Sarah took the initiative to reach out to Josh and let him know that their friendship had to change. "I told him I couldn't keep talking like this," she explained one evening as they prepared dinner together. "I want to focus on us, and I'm committed to making this work." Mark appreciated her honesty, but a small part of him still felt uneasy. "I'm glad you're taking that step, but it's going to take time for me to fully trust again," he said, stirring the sauce simmering on the stove. "I get it," she replied, her voice tinged with regret. "I'll be patient. I want us to heal together." Over the next few weeks, they began to engage in open conversations about their feelings, hopes, and fears. They revisited their wedding plans, discussing every detail and ensuring they both felt heard. It was during these conversations that Mark realized how much he had missed connecting with Sarah. One evening, as they sat on the couch with notebooks spread out in front of them, Sarah proposed a fun exercise. "Let's write down our dream honeymoon destinations," she suggested, her eyes lighting up. "Sounds fun. I've always wanted to go to Bali," Mark said, smiling at the thought of sandy beaches and warm sunsets. "Bali? Great choice. I've been dreaming of going to Greece," she replied enthusiastically, jotting it down. They exchanged ideas and began to plan their dream getaway, laughing and daydreaming about their future. But beneath the surface, the healing process was ongoing, and they both knew it would take more than just fun activities to mend the rift that had formed. One evening, as they settled in for a movie night, Mark turned to Sarah, feeling the weight of unspoken words. "Can we talk about what happened? I think we need to address it head on," he said, his voice steady. Sarah nodded, her expression serious. "Of course. I'm ready to talk. I want us to get through this together." Mark took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. "I think what hurt the most wasn't just the messages but the feeling of betrayal. I felt like I didn't know you in that moment." "I never wanted to hurt you," Sarah replied, her voice thick with emotion. "I got caught up in reminiscing and didn't realize how it would look to you. I see that now." Mark sighed, feeling a mix of frustration and understanding. "I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but the secrecy made it worse. I want to feel like we're a team, not just two people planning a wedding." "Me too," she said earnestly. "I want to share everything with you. I'll make a real effort to be more transparent. I never want you to feel like I'm keeping secrets again." "Thank you," Mark replied, grateful for her commitment. "It's going to take time for me to adjust, but I appreciate you being open." As they continued their conversation, they shared their vulnerabilities and fears about the future. Mark opened up about his past relationships and how trust had been a significant issue. Sarah shared her struggles with feeling overwhelmed by wedding planning and the pressure to create the perfect day. "I thought I could handle it all, but I lost sight of what mattered most, us," she admitted, her eyes glistening with tears. Mark reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "We'll figure this out together. Our relationship is what matters most." That night marked a turning point for both of them. They had confronted their issues head on, and for the first time in weeks, Mark felt a weight lift from his shoulders. There was still work to be done, but they were both willing to put in the effort. As the weeks turned into months, they continued their journey of healing. Mark made a conscious effort to express his feelings more openly, while Sarah focused on being more transparent about her friendships and the challenges she faced. They worked through the ups and downs, always prioritizing their connection. However, the past still lingered in the background. One evening, while discussing their upcoming wedding, Sarah turned serious. "Mark, I think it's important we take a break from planning for a bit. I want to focus on us before we get lost in the details again." Mark's heart sank slightly. "Do you think we need a break from the wedding?" "Not a break from the wedding itself, but from all the pressure surrounding it. I want us to reconnect without the stress," she clarified, her expression sincere. Mark nodded, feeling a mix of relief and apprehension. "I think that's a good idea. We can focus on our relationship and what truly matters." As they spent the next few weekends enjoying each other's company, going for hikes, trying new restaurants, and reconnecting with their friends, their bond began to strengthen. They rediscovered the joy of being together without the weight of wedding planning pressing down on them. One Saturday afternoon, they decided to take a spontaneous trip to a nearby beach. The weather was perfect, and as they walked along the shore, hand in hand, Mark felt a renewed sense of hope. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore washed over them, bringing a sense of peace. "Can you believe how far we've come?" Sarah said, glancing up at Mark with a smile. "We've made it through so much together." "Yeah, it's been a journey," he replied, looking out at the horizon. "I'm proud of us. It hasn't been easy, but I feel like we're stronger now." As they settled down on the sand, Mark reflected on the lessons they had learned. Trust, communication, and vulnerability had become the cornerstones of their relationship. They were no longer just two people planning a wedding, they were partners committed to facing life's challenges together. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, Mark turned to Sarah. "I want you to know how much I love you. I'm in this for the long haul, no matter what challenges come our way." "I love you too, Mark," she replied, her eyes shining. "We're a team, and I wouldn't want to go through this with anyone else." With renewed determination, they watched the sunset together, ready to face whatever came next. They had come through the storm, and together, they could weather anything life threw their way. Chapter 6: The Final Countdown. As the wedding date approached, the atmosphere was charged with excitement and a hint of nervousness. Mark and Sarah had successfully navigated their challenges and were more in sync than ever. Yet, the looming event still cast a shadow, reminding them of the fragility of their relationship. With just a few weeks left until the wedding, they immersed themselves in the final preparations. The decision to keep their focus on their relationship had paid off. They were now more connected than they had been in a long time. One evening, as they sat together reviewing the seating chart, Sarah suddenly looked pensive. "Mark, I think we should invite Mia to the wedding," she said carefully, glancing up to gauge his reaction. Mark paused, feeling a mix of surprise and apprehension. "Mia? After everything that's happened? I know it might seem strange, but she's been supportive throughout this process. She was actually one of the first to hear about our engagement," Sarah explained, her tone earnest. "I want her there as a symbol of moving forward. It's about forgiveness." Mark considered her words, still wrestling with the memories of Sarah's connection to Josh and the unease that lingered. "I appreciate that you want to forgive and move forward, but can we do it slowly? Maybe let's keep the guest list smaller for now." "Of course," Sarah replied, her eyes softening. "I just thought it would be nice to reach out to the people who care about us. But I completely understand if you need more time." They compromised, settling on inviting only close family and a few friends, excluding Mia for now. Mark felt relieved, knowing they were both still prioritizing trust in their decisions. As the days rolled on, the wedding preparations intensified. They spent late nights crafting DIY decorations, picking out flowers, and finalizing the playlist for the reception. Their laughter filled the air, and Mark often caught glimpses of the joy that had initially drawn him to Sarah. On a particularly warm evening, Sarah suggested they take a break and have a mini date night. "How about we have a picnic under the stars?" she proposed, excitement dancing in her voice. "That sounds amazing," Mark agreed, feeling a spark of enthusiasm. They packed a basket with sandwiches, fruit, and a bottle of wine, and headed to a nearby park. As they settled on a blanket, the stars twinkling above, Sarah leaned against Mark, resting her head on his shoulder. "This is perfect," she sighed, her voice filled with contentment. Mark smiled, feeling a wave of warmth wash over him. "Yeah, it really is. Just us, no wedding stress." They spent the evening reminiscing about their favorite moments together, from their first date to the little adventures they had embarked on as a couple. The laughter and connection they shared made the worries about the wedding fade into the background. As the night deepened, Sarah turned serious. "Mark, I want to ask you something," she said softly, sitting up to face him. "Of course, what's on your mind?" he replied, concern flickering in his chest. "Do you think we're ready for this? For marriage, I mean," she asked, her eyes searching his. Mark felt a moment of hesitation, but he quickly shook it off. "I do. We've been through so much, and I believe we've come out stronger. It hasn't been easy, but I love you, and I'm ready to commit to you for life." Sarah's face lit up with a smile, but then her expression shifted to one of concern. "What if something happens? What if we face challenges again? I don't want to go through that kind of pain again." "I won't lie and say it'll be perfect," Mark replied gently. "But I promise to be there for you. We'll face everything together, and we'll keep communicating, no matter how hard it gets. We've learned that it's the only way to survive." Tears filled Sarah's eyes as she nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "You're right. We'll make it work. I just want to be the best partner I can be." Mark reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "And I want to be the best partner for you. We're in this together, always." As they finished their picnic, a sense of calm washed over them. They had confronted their fears and reaffirmed their commitment to each other. The journey to their wedding day no longer felt daunting, it felt like the next step in their shared adventure. #### the wedding day. The day of the wedding dawned bright and clear, with a gentle breeze rustling the trees. As Mark stood at the altar, dressed in his sharp tuxedo, he felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. The sight of the decorated venue filled him with anticipation, but his mind kept drifting to Sarah. Moments before the ceremony, he took a deep breath and glanced at his watch, counting down the minutes until he would see her. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket. It was a message from Sarah. "Sarah *, I can't wait to see you at the altar. You're going to look so handsome. Love you." Mark smiled, feeling a wave of warmth. Just then, his best man, Jake, walked over. "You ready for this, man?" he asked, clapping Mark on the shoulder. "Yeah, I think so," Mark replied, trying to shake off the nerves. "Just waiting to see Sarah. Trust me, she's going to be stunning," Jake said with a grin. "Just focus on her." When the music began to play, Mark's heart raced. He turned to see Sarah walking down the aisle, a vision in white. Her radiant smile lit up the entire space, and he felt all the worries fade away. As she approached, their eyes locked, and for a moment, the world around them melted away. All the struggles they had faced together felt worth it in that instant. When Sarah reached him, she whispered, "I love you," her voice full of emotion. "I love you too," Mark replied, his heart swelling with pride and happiness. As the ceremony progressed, they exchanged vows filled with sincerity and promises for a future built on trust, love, and communication. When they sealed their vows with a kiss, the guests erupted in applause, and Mark felt a sense of relief wash over him. After the ceremony, during the reception, Mark and Sarah mingled with their guests, basking in the love and joy surrounding them. They danced, laughed, and celebrated their journey together. Later in the evening, as they took a moment to catch their breath, Sarah leaned in and whispered, "I couldn't have asked for a more perfect day. Thank you for believing in us." Mark smiled, pulling her close. "You were perfect, and I'm so glad we made it here. This is just the beginning, you know." "Yeah, the beginning of our forever," Sarah said, her eyes sparkling. As they shared a quiet moment together amidst the celebration, Mark realized that they had weathered the storm and emerged stronger. Their love was no longer just about the perfect wedding, it was about the commitment to face life's challenges hand in hand, no matter what. And in that moment, surrounded by their loved ones, Mark knew they were ready to embrace whatever came next together. As the weeks passed after their wedding, Mark and Sarah settled into their new life as a married couple. The challenges they had faced only served to strengthen their bond, and they approached their future with a renewed sense of purpose. They took time to create new memories together, enjoying spontaneous weekend getaways, cooking together in their kitchen, and spending lazy Sunday afternoons exploring their city. Each moment brought them closer, reinforcing the promises they had made to each other on their wedding day. One evening, as they sat on their balcony watching the sunset, Sarah turned to Mark, her expression thoughtful. "Do you ever think about how far we've come? From where we started to where we are now?" "Absolutely," Mark replied, reflecting on their journey. "I never thought we'd get here, but I'm grateful we did. It's a testament to our commitment and love. I want us to keep communicating openly, no matter what," Sarah said earnestly. "I don't want to go back to the way things were." "Agreed," Mark replied, feeling a surge of affection for her. "We'll always talk things through. That's what makes us strong." As they enjoyed their quiet evening, Mark felt a sense of contentment wash over him. They had emerged from their struggles with a deeper understanding of one another. Each challenge had become a stepping stone, guiding them toward a more profound connection. Months later, during a quiet dinner at their favorite restaurant, Mark decided it was time for another important conversation. He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. "Sarah, I've been thinking, what do you think about starting a family someday?" Her eyes widened in surprise, but then a smile spread across her face. "Wow, that's something I've thought about too. I want to be a mom one day, but I want to make sure we're ready." Mark nodded, feeling a rush of excitement. "I think we can handle it. We've grown so much, and I believe we can tackle anything together." "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her voice filled with warmth. "We'll take our time and enjoy this journey together." Chapter 7: Uncharted Waters. As Mark and Sarah stepped into the realm of parenthood discussions, they found themselves in a world of excitement and uncertainty. Both had always envisioned a family but knew that the timing and circumstances would play a crucial role in shaping their future. The following months were filled with deep conversations about their dreams and fears regarding parenthood. They made it a point to regularly sit down and discuss what they envisioned for their future, drawing on their experiences to guide them. Each dialogue was an opportunity to share, to be vulnerable, and to grow together. One weekend, they decided to take a trip to visit Sarah's parents. It was the first time since their wedding, and Mark felt a mix of eagerness and apprehension. He knew Sarah's family had always been close, and he wanted to ensure that they started their journey as a family with the right foundation. As they arrived, the familiar warmth of her parents' home enveloped them. Laughter echoed through the rooms as they were greeted with hugs and welcoming smiles. Dinner was a lively affair, filled with stories, food, and heartfelt conversations. Mark could feel Sarah's excitement, and it reassured him. Later that evening, after dinner, while sitting on the porch with Sarah's parents, the topic of children came up. "So, when are you two planning to give us some grandbabies?" Sarah's mom teased, winking at Mark. Mark chuckled nervously but felt the heat rise in his cheeks. Sarah smiled, her eyes sparkling. "We've talked about it, actually. We want to take our time, but it's definitely something we're considering." Her parents exchanged glances, the kind that spoke volumes. "Well, just remember that parenting is a journey," her dad said. "There will be ups and downs, but the love you'll share is worth every challenge." The advice resonated with both Mark and Sarah. As the evening progressed, they found themselves wrapped in a warm embrace of familial love, and it deepened their connection to each other. The prospect of starting a family no longer felt daunting, it was exciting. As spring transitioned into summer, Mark and Sarah continued to explore the idea of parenthood. They attended parenting workshops, read books, and connected with friends who had recently become parents. Each experience deepened their understanding and helped to solidify their desire to start a family. One weekend, they joined a group of friends for a picnic in the park. As they watched their friends with children play, Mark turned to Sarah, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Do you think we're ready for this?" he asked, uncertainty creeping into his voice. Sarah took a moment, her gaze fixed on a group of toddlers laughing and chasing each other. "I think we're as ready as we'll ever be. But it's okay to feel scared. It's a big step, and we don't have to rush into it." Mark nodded, grateful for her calmness. "You're right. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I don't want to repeat past mistakes." "Neither do I," Sarah replied, taking his hand in hers. "We'll face this together. We have each other's backs." As the summer days turned into warm evenings, they began to find joy in the little moments. They took day trips to the beach, hiked local trails, and spent evenings cooking new recipes together. These experiences served as a foundation for the kind of family life they envisioned, full of love and adventure. However, the topic of starting a family remained complex. As the months went by, they noticed a shift in their conversations. Mark found himself becoming increasingly anxious about the implications of becoming parents. He expressed his concerns to Sarah one evening while preparing dinner. "I just don't want to mess this up," he admitted, his voice laced with vulnerability. "What if I'm not a good dad? What if we struggle?" "Mark," Sarah said, pausing her chopping to turn and face him. "We're going to be learning as we go. No one has all the answers. We'll figure it out together, and we'll support each other through the challenges." Her reassurance helped calm his nerves. "You're right. I just need to trust the process and believe in us." "Exactly," she smiled, returning to her task. "We've faced so much together already. This is just another chapter." As summer faded into fall, a new opportunity presented itself. Mark and Sarah attended a community event focused on family planning and parenting resources. There, they met a couple who had recently adopted and shared their journey with a candid openness that inspired Mark and Sarah. After the event, they found a quiet spot in the park, and Mark felt a surge of excitement. "What do you think about adoption?" he asked, his eyes bright with curiosity. "I've thought about it," Sarah replied thoughtfully. "It's a beautiful way to build a family, and it could be an option for us if we decide to go that route." Mark nodded, feeling invigorated by the idea. "I love the thought of giving a child a loving home. It's something I'd really like to explore." The couple's story sparked a new conversation for them, one filled with hope and possibilities. They spent the rest of the afternoon discussing the idea of adoption, the potential challenges, and the immense rewards it could bring. In the weeks that followed, they researched adoption processes, attended support groups, and met families who had experienced the journey. Each conversation deepened their connection and reaffirmed their commitment to building a family together. One evening, after a long day of work, Mark returned home to find Sarah sitting at the dining table, her face lit up by the soft glow of a lamp. "Hey, I've been reading about adoption agencies," she said, her eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. Mark pulled up a chair, intrigued. "What did you find out?" Sarah excitedly shared the information she had gathered. "There are so many resources available. We can start by attending an informational meeting next week. They'll explain the process, and we can ask questions." Mark felt a rush of anticipation. "Let's do it. I want to know everything we can." As they prepared for the meeting, the excitement was palpable. They felt like they were finally taking control of their future and moving closer to their dream of starting a family. The day of the informational meeting arrived, and Mark and Sarah sat in a cozy room filled with others who were on similar journeys. As they listened to the speakers share their experiences, Mark felt a sense of belonging wash over him. This community was full of love and support, and he knew they were in the right place. After the meeting, they had the chance to speak with families who had gone through the adoption process. Their stories were filled with hope, laughter, and resilience, and it reassured Mark and Sarah that they were making the right choice. "Can you imagine us with kids?" Sarah whispered to Mark, her eyes shining with excitement. "Absolutely. I can already see it," he replied, smiling. "I can see us going on adventures, reading bedtime stories, and creating a loving home together." As they left the meeting, hand in hand, Mark felt a wave of optimism. The road ahead might be filled with challenges, but they were ready to embrace it together. Their love had carried them through hardships before, and now, it was guiding them toward a beautiful future. Over the next few months, they immersed themselves in the process of preparing for adoption. They attended workshops, filled out paperwork, and created a family profile to share with potential birth mothers. Each step brought them closer to their dream. As winter approached, the couple sat in their living room, surrounded by decorations and warm blankets. "I can't believe how far we've come," Mark said, reflecting on their journey. "From a disastrous proposal to planning for our family." Sarah chuckled, "It's been quite a ride. But I wouldn't want to go through it with anyone else." Mark pulled her close, feeling grateful for their journey. "We've learned so much about each other, and I feel more connected than ever." "I feel the same way," Sarah said softly. "We've built a strong foundation, and I know we can handle whatever comes next." With the glow of the holiday lights around them, they toasted to their future, filled with hope, love, and the promise of new beginnings. They were ready to face their next chapter, hand in hand, excited for the family they would create together.